fortunate to start on time, and because we want to finish on time. There is a cricket match as well waiting for us to India versus England. So we'll try to wrap up with an interesting session today, so that we can enjoy the second half of the evening. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today at the third day of Urban Mobility India Conference and Exhibition 2023. My name is Sharif, and I'm working in the Transport and Urban Governance Division in TERI. Fortunate to steer this conversation, and fortunate to have Sudhendu sir on the panel as chair, and of course the speakers, esteemed speakers from different fields. I'll request. Yeah, good to go. Yeah, thanks. So what we'll do is we'll just quickly have a round of introduction, and I'll introduce the speakers before we get into the presentation. So there are 4 presentations today by the speakers, and there is a 5th one as well, which is a context setting presentation from our team. Viral Joshi will be presenting it today, and so I'll just give a brief introduction of all the speakers to begin with, and then we'll proceed with the flow of the event as per the agenda. Unfortunately, Mr. Roy is not able to join us today. He's on travel, and he couldn't join from representing India Post and talking about initiatives. So we are taking the lead and will present on his behalf. Because TERI is working on the electrification of fleet for India Post in India. And so getting into the speakers, Sudhendu sir, thank you so much for joining us today. Sudhendu sir is an alumnus of St. Stephen's College, has experience of over 30 years in operations and infrastructure planning, coordination, management, and field policy making levels in Indian Railways. He has got multiple awards from Government of India. He's also served as Dean of IRITEM, which is the Traffic Management Institute of Indian Railways in Lucknow. He's also served as General Manager CRIS, and therefore a lot of experience from the technology and IT perspective. He has training and enrichment from Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, Germany, and the US. He's the advisor at the Niti Aayog, which is the apex think tank of Government of India. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. We also have Dr. Geeta Krishnan Ramadurai, Professor IT Madras, Transportation Engineering Division. He has been a faculty member in the Robert Bosch Center for Data Science and AI at IIT Madras. His overarching goal is to develop technological and management solutions for a safe, sustainable transportation system. His primary research interests are in network modeling, dynamic traffic simulation and assignment, and of course, urban freight and vehicle emissions are part of his expertise. He has advised Chennai Port Trust, JNPT, Kolkata Port Trust, and CITCO, Navi Mumbai, for improving congestion of trucks destined at ports, and has undertaken several research projects on sustainable urban freight. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. We have Professor Sanjay Gupta, and many of the audience here is student of Sir Sanjay Gupta, sir, including Preeti as well. So thank you, sir, for joining us today on the discussion on urban freight. He has master's degree in transport planning, SPA New Delhi. He is presently serving as Dean Research and Faculty Welfare, besides as a Professor of Transport Planning at SPA Delhi. He has nearly 36 years of experience at SPA Delhi. His areas of interest besides freight logistics include urban and regional transport planning, public transport planning, demand modeling, land use, transport planning, sustainable issues and policy aspects. He has published several technical papers. He's also coordinator for Center for Urban Freight Studies and Center for Shared and Electric Mobility at SPA Delhi. He is recipient of Commonwealth Academic Fellowship at Institute of Transport Studies, Leeds. Besides being a visiting fellow professor at ITS Leeds University for 2 terms between 2013 and 19. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. We have Mr. Shailendra Gupta, who is the CFO and co-founder of Altigreen, which is a premier three-wheeler electric vehicle, commercial vehicle manufacturer in India. He has rich experience of over 34 years in finance, business development, and manufacturing. Mr. Gupta co-founded Altigreen to envision an electric future for last mile transportation in India. He has previously worked as SBI Capital Markets, Deutsche Bank, Siemens Communication, and BCH Electric, where he was CFO for 11 years. He's a BITS Pilani alumnus, and he has also has an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. Thank you so much, sir, for joining. We have Preeti Shukla from Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. She is instrumental in supporting the NEBP, which is National Electric Bus Program, and EFAST program anchored at Niti Aayog, respectively. She has also contributed the National Transport Decarbonization Council and has represented Shakti as a panelist at the 4th Roadmap Conference 2023 held in Portland, USA. So in USA, and Preeti has a master's degree in planning with specialization in urban planning from SPA Delhi, and bachelor's of architecture from Seda Navrachana University, Vadodara. She was also associated at the National NCRTC and for transit-oriented development and value capture finance for the Delhi Meerut Rapid Rail Transit System. Thank you, Preeti, for joining us today. We'll quickly have a 5 to 8-minute presentation from our colleague, Ms. Viral, on the integrated sustainable urban freight and logistics topic. Just to set the context, and we'll follow up with the discussions with the panelists thereafter. So Viral, over to you for the presentation.
Thank you, Sharaf. Very good morning and warm welcome to everyone. The session Integrated and Sustainable Urban Freight Logistics is curated by Terry. Terry has over 50 years of experience and expertise in leveraging sustainable transport and sustainable development across various sectors, starting from energy, urban, agriculture, to various divisions. Some of the key works that Transport and Urban Governance Division has undertaken in the last 4-5 years related to sustainable transport, starting from rail green points for the long-haul freight, urban freight initiatives, and the analysis on how the cost and emission dynamics would work if we electrify our fleet. We have worked with the different organizations, government and non-government, to help them implement electric vehicles. We have worked for the public transport system and intermediate transport system, that how we can leverage sustainable transport and pave the way for the sustainable development goals and our net zero 2070 target. So giving a very brief idea and numbers for the logistics sector, that why the discussion around sustainable and integrated logistics and urban freight is important. So globally, logistics sector is responsible for 11% CO2 emissions, and 90% of them come from freight transport and movement. India has the very wide market of logistics, and 4.6 billion tons of goods are handled annually, which provides a livelihood to 22 million people and contributes to 14% of the GDP. So the GDP contribution of logistics sector in India is comparatively very high than the other developing and developed nations. With respect to that, national logistic policy was launched in 1 year ago to bring down the GDP contribution of logistics sector below the 10%, that is to reduce the cost, and also to leverage integrated and sustainable transport system so that we can contribute and achieve our goal of net zero by 2070. And we also know that transport is the third largest contributor to Indian emissions, and majority of it comes from the road transport. As the road transport is primarily focused on fossil fuels like diesel, the emission load from the transport sector is higher and needs a focused attention to go to the route of sustainability. We can see that out of 20 most polluting cities in India, 14 are the Indian cities. We are more going towards the convenience, and we are being more and more reliable and dependent on the doorstep deliveries of goods. That is via e-commerce and quick commerce. We want 15 minutes deliveries of goods delivered to our home, and that eventually contributes to the great amount of pollution and urban pollution. A research says that almost 15% of the vehicular movement in the city area is contributed by urban freight, and this varies to almost 40-50% to many cities. And we can see that the graph shows majority of the small and commercial goods vehicle registered in India in the last 10 years are diesel vehicles. The adoption of electric vehicles has increased over the years, like it has reached to at least 27%, but we need focused efforts to increase the share of electric vehicles and also understand what are the key gaps, why we are still at 27% of electric and hybrid vehicles, how we can achieve the greater share, and what are other ways which may help to supplement the gap of this diesel vehicle in our road to sustainable urban freight. Terry took pioneer work in started in almost 2017 on the focused on electric vehicles for the commercial segment. And in our report launched in 1920, we try to identify what are the key prime movers for the electrification of urban freight. And we are happy to see that majority of the findings of the report are translated into the actions, and we are seeing the EV adoption in solid waste management, quick commerce, and e-commerce delivery segment. If we have the higher share of EVs in our small and commercial vehicle segment systems, we can reduce to 14% of CO2 emissions. And we did this focus study for the Surat, which said that 75% reduction in the GHG emissions from the solid waste management operations can be achieved by deploying electric vehicles. Not only that, this electrification also contributes to the bringing down the capital cost and fuel cost. We can see that 98% of the fuel cost and 57% capital cost also reduce with the electrification. So electrification somewhere answers two key questions: are national logistic policy, bringing down the cost and catering to the sustainable mobility. Currently, as Sharif rightly mentioned, we are working with the Department of Post to electrify their mail motor services. So India has 103 mail motor services having around 1500 to 2000 vehicles, which are largely dominated by diesel vehicles. So these vehicles are used to transport the mails and parcels from railway and airport sorting hubs to the sub post offices and centers for the end mile deliveries. If we electrify these vehicles, we have the potential to save almost 10,000 tons of tailpipe emissions from the system. Just imagine if all the government organizations, private organizations set their goals to electrify or adopt for the more sustainable modes of transport, how much impact a transport can make in bringing down our emissions. And even when we talk about the cost aspect, we can see that when we compare ICE to electric vehicles, the total cost of ownership for electric vehicles is comparatively lesser for light and medium commercial vehicles. There is still scope for more invention and work in the HDV segment, where we can have more electric vehicle models which are reliable, efficient, and cost efficient as well. So today's session, we have a very eminent panel starting from the academics to the OEMs to the research organizations, funding organizations, and it's being chaired by Sudhendu sir. He has been instrumental in leveraging the sustainable transport and infrastructure in India. So what are we expecting from the session, from the discussions like this which are going on, that how important is the target setting? What commitments we want from the government and the private companies to meet our goals? How do we leverage data analysis, collection, and planning, and integrating our master plans, development plans with the logistic plans and logistic movements to achieve the 2070 target? And what is the technology available? What are the barriers? How the funding would work for specifically for electric vehicles and the charging infrastructure, that we can have the wider adoption of electric vehicles in our coming years. So I will end here with the brief outline of the sessions and the logistics sector in India. And over to you, Sharif. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Viral, for setting the context. And we have seen certain examples and how we have moved in the past 6 to 7 years towards electrification in the urban freight domain. I'll hand it over to Sudhendu sir for his initial remark and then chair the session going forward. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sharif. Good to be in the company of almost all people whom the faces are known, and many of the names are known. I've got my old friend Ajit Pai right there, and a lot of learning has been with him once he was when he was at NITI. I just wish Pai you should have been in electric mobility so that we could have taken it all the more at a higher pace. Gerald is there. His contribution is really signal, and plus of course Mr. Rao and Mr. Gupta and Mr. Sanjay. Priti is there. Sharif, of course. So, needless to say that urban freight and logistics. This is a most now I would say it has become a very very core target for us to address. So let's put it this way that in addition to the pace of urbanization that is taking place, we all know it, that 2% of India's land mass, 32,87,263 square kilometer of India, 2% is going to contribute close to 96-98% of GDP. So this 2% has to be managed very well. And if in every minute 20 plus people are migrating, between 20-28 people are migrating from rural to urban areas, and they are settling down. In fact, in Delhi and NCR, it is all the more so because it is almost 2.5 to 3 individuals every minute they are reaching out to this place. That means that mobility and connectivity becomes the principal challenge. And that is one area. And then similarly, it is the urban freight. By freight is of course meant two kind of things. One is the one which is moving throughout the day inside the urban boundaries, plus those which are coming in and going out, especially during the odd hours. They have to be addressed. That is what the challenge is. It is not that when we were conceiving FAME, we were not aware of it. We knew that this has to be a focus. But the first we wanted to focus on the passenger segments. We did not exclude these, but the focus was very clear that we wanted to kind of prioritize the passenger vehicles and then subsequently shift to the urban freight and the logistics components. So 2 years earlier, 2 years ago, we launched at NITI what we call Shuni campaign, Zero Pollution Delivery campaign. That was focusing on urban logistics basically. So what we did was that almost, of course, in these 2 years, there are 180 partners who have joined there. These are basically, so you name it, it is from Swiggy to that of Amazon, IKEA, you name all of them, rather, anyone which you can think of, the delivery people. So the idea was that we must first clean up and decarbonize the vehicles which are involved in the delivery of products and commodities in the urban area. That was the focus number one. And in these 2 years, the way we have taken it forward, of course, with the help of many think tanks, RMI is, of course, a lead partner, it is fabulous. What has happened is the strategy has been very simple. We have kind of gone to these partners. We have just asked them that you make a commitment based on your own strength. And then we would hold you to your commitment. That is what is. Commitment is yours, but then we will be chasing it after that. And these 2 years have produced fabulous results. The pace at which this movement is taking place, let me tell you, that there is no country in the world where without mandate, it has been at such a fast pace. So that is one sector which is going ahead with. Then the heavy duty vehicles, that is the second area. So last year we launched a scheme, an initiative of NITI was there, what we called eFast. So that was a freight accelerator for sustainable transportation that was launched. There we focused on the heavy duty vehicles, those especially which are serving the urban areas. So that was the focus. I would put it this way, that in almost close to 1 year that we have spent, we have been able to aggregate the demand. Let me tell you, when we had started, there was not a single individual who was willing to say that, who was willing to accept and position one electric truck. There was not even one. So if we are not able to create a demand, where is the question for going in for supply and nudging the manufacturers? So that was the situation. Now, in these 1 year that we have worked with, and now there are a number of them, so almost 14 think tanks, we brought them together and we asked them to get going. The office of PSA was again brought into it. The IITs were roped into it. And finally, those who are the major players in logistics and transport business, we went to them and kind of nudged them that have some of the vehicles, run them, at least see, create some pilots, And this 1 year journey has been that close to 8,500, that is the number that they have given from one. When we were struggling with one, now it is 8,500, close to that. They have said that they would be willing to position provided it is available. Now at least we come to a stage where somebody is ready, a taker is there. And now we are going to the manufacturers and telling them they have started manufacturing. The only thing is that we don't have born heavy duty electric vehicles. So the Sheshi is the old, Ashok Leyland or Tata one, on which they mount the battery and other systems, and not the in replacement to the existing one. So that is what the system is. So now we are going a step ahead, where we are asking them to go for born kind of, this thing. This is what the initiatives have been. Now, my sense is that as we move on, FAME 2 will be closing down, and we are now trying to conceptualize on, how we go forward, whether we would be able to give incentives forward or not. If so, if more vehicle segments can be brought in, and then we do feel that, okay, if it is possible, these vehicle segments which have hitherto been excluded from our coverage, they should be brought into the spectrum. That is what the idea is. And maybe more focus on enabling infrastructure, charging and others. That has to be brought into it. Internationally, if you also see, this is the way they have taken it forward. So my sense is that it's real time to kind of decarbonize the urban freight and logistics sector. And I'm sure that the kind of speakers and discussion that would follow, we would be able to identify the policy gaps. Rather, I would say that there are not many clear-cut policies. So maybe that, what new policies could be there that could be identified. And yes, what could be the way forward so that we are able to achieve it. The good thing is that internationally today, many of the agencies are extremely active to work in the area of urban freight and logistics for the decarbonization initiative. So at NITI, I find that you see all this University of California at Davis, they have got the Sustainable Mobility Division, and their Professor Sperling, all the who are internationally reputed ones, they are all trying to reach out to us and kind of impress upon it. We are into the deliberations with them, and they always say that many countries in the world they have kind of attempted, and their confidence and sense is that India would be the first to kind of achieve it to a target that all the international countries, all the countries could, they can sing for. This is what we are going ahead with. So now I am waiting for Sherry, the presentations, and I'm sure that as we move on, so more and more insights would be coming, and then once discussion is there, it would be all the more, we will have clarity by the end of this session that how we take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think we can start with the presentations, and if we can, we want to go with the sequence as per the agenda, sir, in your sheet.
That should be better. So we invite Mr. Shailendra Gupta is the first speaker. Yes. So we have got, I think, a discipline is also there for speakers to present it in, say, 10 minutes. So try to wrap it up in 10 minutes so that we have more time to kind of discuss among ourselves how to move forward.
Thank you. I will certainly attempt to stick to the discipline. My fault usually is that I end up finishing too soon, but I hope I will not fall into that trap this time. No, it's a very valuable session that we have in front of us, and I want to express my thanks to the organizers for calling us here. And I'm happy that there is a private sector partner in this conference. I will try not to speak too much about Altigreen, except to the extent that it is relevant to the context here. But we started this company 12 years ago with the vision of carbon-free transportation. Precisely the subject that we're talking about here. Our vision statement is carbon-free transportation, and particularly in last mile transport in urban mobility. And today, I just want to expose some myths. I was very happy to hear in the context-setting presentation that some of the areas we are seeing 27% adoption, but usually the dialogue that or the conversations that happen around us are that EV adoption is not picking up. EV adoption is slow. And what are the reasons for that and how we can change that? So that's one of the myths that I will address briefly. Charging infrastructure, of course, I don't need to talk about. Range anxiety is another of those problem areas or so-called problem areas. And fourth one is imported technology. EVs cannot progress in India because we need to import. We need to import motors, we need to import controllers, we need to import electronics, and so on and so forth. So these are just four of the major myths that I want to talk about today. There are a few others, but let's just focus on these. And I'm only putting up a single chart. Altigreen is in the electric three-wheeler business, not the e-rickshaw, but the L5 category. Last mile, urban, highly dense cities. In a matter of 3 years, we are seeing that the adoption rate has gone from 1% to 24%. 1% to 24%. The shape of the curve is moving to the exponential phase. The last 3 years were all linear growth, but we are seeing the growth moving to exponential. Now, clearly, this is going to differ from platform to platform. Cargo or commercial vehicles, whether for carrying goods or for passengers, will see higher adoption rates because of the asset utilization and the total cost of ownership. Personal vehicles will see it growing much smaller. Whether it is two-wheelers or cars, personal vehicle adoption is going to be slower. But I think it's important to point out that we are seeing very high rates of adoption. This is true for three-wheeler cargo. The same is true for three-wheeler passenger, where it's already, in the last 2 years, it's already reached 12%. The second myth we want to talk about is on charging infrastructure. Today, Altigreen, as a manufacturer of electric three-wheelers, has sold more than 4,000 vehicles. Our competitors have sold another, all put together, maybe 10 or 15 or 20,000 electric three-wheelers. These are running literally all over the country. I've just circled, the four extremities. Today we have a vehicle running in Ladakh. Preeti was telling me before the session, there are actually 2 Altigreen vehicles running in Ladakh. There's a vehicle which we never sold in that area, but it is running close to the Burma border. Right? Somebody bought it from our Guwahati dealer and is driving it. I hope he doesn't take it into Burma. We don't want to cause any international incidents. But this is a fact. Across all parts of the country, electric vehicles are running. And not a single customer, I think this is important for me to highlight, not a single customer has ever come back and said, where will I charge the vehicle? Because this is the role of innovation, right? We create a vehicle which can be charged in any 3-pin plug. You can plug it into a 3-pin socket, and I guarantee you there are more 3-pin sockets in the country than petrol pumps. I hope there is no disagreement with that. But there is no problem of charging infrastructure. Yes, there will be a problem of charging infrastructure for heavy duty vehicles, where the power levels are much higher, where they are going cross country, they will need some charging stations on the highways, certainly. But for the most densely populated 2% of the land area of the country, you do not need much charging infrastructure. It's already there. Over the last 80 years or 100 years of electrification of the country, the charging infrastructure has already been set up. So people used to talk about the chicken and egg, which will come first, whether you need to have a sufficient mass of electric vehicles or you need charging infrastructure first. No, let's break the egg, make the omelette, we are good to go. Range anxiety. And for this, I think this is another of those big myths. Most people in the commercial vehicle space, especially in the intra-city last mile space, do not have range anxiety. Do not. Provided the product they are looking at is a well-designed product. These are issues to look at. I just put a case study of a customer. The highlight of this is that this particular customer, and he's not the only one, has been running the vehicle for almost 200 kilometers a day, every day for 200 days. He has never come back to us and said, where will I charge my vehicle? How can I charge it? And our vehicle does not have a range of 200 kilometers. It has a range of only 120 kilometers. He is fine. He charges at night, then he stops in the day, he charges it. He's running at 200 kilometers. And as a result of running at 200 kilometers, his cost saving is about 20,000 rupees a month. 20,000 rupees a month. As an individual driver cum owner, that is how his costs have come down. And his revenue has gone up by maybe another 30,000 rupees. That's the benefit at the bottom of the urban pyramid. The fourth and final myth that I want to address is on imported technology. Today, at least as far as my company is concerned, but this is true for in varying degrees with many companies. On the left side, you see the list of all the components which we call the EV stack, the electric vehicle technology stack. There's a motor, there's a controller, there's battery and BMS, there's DC-DC converter, there's a gearbox. Electric gearbox is different from an ICE vehicle gearbox. Gearbox is also part of the EV stack. There's a display, telematics, wire harness, these are all different. Each of these components is made in India. Each of them. Not a single one of them is imported. What do we import? We import cells, because cells are not made in India yet. Under the PLI scheme, in 2025, we will see the first commercial cells plant operational in India. I'm ignoring pilot plants for now. So cells will also get localized. The only thing that will remain is ICs. Okay. We've been waiting for a chip plant in India for maybe 30 years. There was something started in Mohali, didn't work out, but we hope it will come. But other than that, everything that is available in India is being used from here. I'm sorry, I am taking the opportunity to pitch Altigreen a little bit. Other than these two, we do not import anything. If you exclude cells, our domestic value add is 93%. 93% domestic value add. It's only the chips that we import. So, but this is us. I mean, there are plenty of people who are making motors and controllers and so on. We do not need to import any of these aggregates anymore. Okay, just a brief pitch about Altigreen. What are we doing? We are catalyzing the adoption of carbon-free transportation. Another of the myths is that, EVs will take 50 years, 70 years, 80 years to wipe out ICE. We are hoping to do that sooner. Why? And this is a number that I don't know many people know about. There are 2.5 million people who die every year in India because of poor air quality. 2.5 million every year. More than 95% of Indians live in areas of poor air quality, of unsatisfactory air quality. Something needs to be done about it, and it cannot be done by people from outside the country. Not that they don't want to, but they don't understand India. The context of India is different. Okay. And can somebody help me move to the next slide? Okay. So if you look at the right hand side, that is the context of people who used to have the technology, who were trying to sell in India. The same is true for Nike and McDonald's. And McDonald's had to introduce a veggie burger for the first time when they came to India. They thought they can sell their standard burgers in India. No, you have to change when you come to India. And who better to make the change than people sitting in India? This, on the left side, is what you see the reality of India. This is what you have to design for. You cannot bring in the best motor in the world from Germany or Japan or USA or China and expect it to function in India. Right? And I don't have the time, we can get into all details later, but you have to design for that, not for this. And you can only do that if you design in India. So Altigreen, 29 plus global patents across the world. The only place where you don't have patents is China and Japan. China for obvious reasons, Japan, the translation costs were too high for us. 100% in-house design of each of those components that I showed you. Each of those components has been designed, developed, tested, finalized in India and is 100% made in India. Our philosophy is make in India and make for India. Sorry, long before Atmanirbhar was a word. 93% domestic sourcing, I told you that. 15-minute fast charge. 100, going from 0% SOC to 100% SOC in 15 minutes. I like to believe this is the fastest charging vehicle in the country, maybe in the world. 95% uptime. Actually, we are at 98%. Our vehicles have covered 20 million kilometers, more than 2,000 tons of CO2 already saved, and we've reached a stage now where we are, our vehicles are saving 300 to 400 tons per month. And data. 550 million packets of data processed every month. This is when we are still reasonably small company. Okay, this is the last slide. I think it's important to say that sustainability also has to be sustainable. It cannot come from grants, from one-off events. Pilots are important. Pilots have to grow to small scale, medium scale, large scale. And it has to be profitable. The government of India's policies, I'm FAME 2 is a fantastic policy. I cannot express enough how great a policy it is, right? Delhi government as a government, state government or a city, fantastic policy, by far the leader. But, FAME 2, whether it is the demand side incentives, whether it is GST, whether it is any of these things, is just absolutely out of the world. But you scare me when you said, we have to think about what we can do after March. Because whether you do or you don't do, you have to announce it in advance. You have to let us know a year before. Industry cannot plan at the last minute. But we do hope you will continue and happy to engage if that needs. But sustainability has to be sustainable. You have to engage the people. You have to make sure that the user of the vehicle, in this case, electric vehicle, is benefiting. Whether it's 20,000 rupees a month or 10,000 rupees a month that his income is growing, it has to be sustainable. And so that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. I hope I was able to comply with this.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. You rightly said that the pace of transition is absolutely top class. This is what we always say. So once they ask that why it is that, vehicles are not visible. So I say that we have got, 330, 340 million vehicles are there. Out of that, for visibility, at least 10% has to be electric. We have just started, our show barely 3 years back. So maybe we need some more time. If we are comparing with the countries which have, worked for almost 15, 20 years, that would be slightly, it would be unlevel. But yes, you rightly said, almost every 17 second one vehicle is getting registered. Every 5 minutes one car is getting registered. Every 2.5 hours one charging station is being set up. 16 out of 23 IITs have opened up centers of excellence. 33 out of 36 states have announced or final stage of draft EV policy. That is what India it is. And what in the working of 3.5 to 4 years, that is what in fact our intimate interaction and going ahead with electric mobility has been. So over to you. Yes, science has to play a big role, you say, Mr. Geeta Krishnan. Your presentation now, my sense is that if we want to have an innovative pace of this transition, two streams have to collaborate. One is probably the technology wing, and the second is probably the business and the commerce and the management wing. Until both of them are synergized and taking it forward. So maybe you come out with a technology solution, but if the right kind of business model is not placed over there, that transition will be very, very difficult. So over to you for your presentation, Dr. Ramadurai.
Thank you, Sudhendraji and Sudhenduji. And today, of course, I'm here as professor at IIT Madras, but I'm also on a sabbatical working on a startup in sustainable city logistics. So I'm aware of, and I have a couple of Altigreen vehicles in my fleet. So thank you. Yeah. So my presentation will talk more about our research in this area, but later on, perhaps when I'm answering questions, I'll also bring in some of my expertise from running the business. There are two aspects to sustainable urban freight, right? One is the demand side, the other is the supply side, right? So a lot of activity is happening on the supply side, and a lot of it is driven by D2C, right? Direct to consumer. Your Amazons and e-commerce is what is driving it. But there is a lot of freight that moves besides D2C, right? There's a lot of B2B, there's a lot of B2C that happens, right? So understanding the freight trip generation in an urban setting is very important. Typically, focus has been on passenger demand modeling. Freight demand modeling has always been given kind of a stepmotherly treatment, right? Not just in India, it's international phenomenon, right? Even in New York City, right, where I used to work earlier. So that too, freight has always been given secondary importance, right? So that is a growing body of academics who are working on this area, and we've been working on this as well. And in India, things are, of course, different. You talked about heterogeneous traffic, right? So, for example, in the survey in Chennai, we were surprised that about 95% of goods deliveries in the city happen with small vehicles, right? On the other hand, if you look at any of the Western countries, it would be exactly the opposite. Right? 95% would be with trucks, right? Not smaller vehicles. So that's the kind of difference that we have. So what we did was we conducted surveys in Chennai to understand, and this was initial days of e-commerce, so we didn't pay as much attention to e-commerce, right? But we need to do a follow-up study including e-commerce. So this was before e-commerce days, and so that's the Chennai metropolitan area. But you can see at the center you have the core city area, which is where we primarily focused on. One key issue here was data, right? There was no single source from which we could get data on how many establishments are currently operating in Chennai, right? Everybody had their own source, and then Google has its own source, and right. So we had to kind of do data fusion from multiple sources to get a reasonable picture, of how many establishments are out there, right? And we collected multiple information, right, including area, how many employees are there, right? Whether they have parking or not, whether they have loading docks or not, and so on, right? And using this data, we were able to build what we call as freight trip generation models, right? And we were able to understand what factors are impacting freight trip generation, right? So I apologize, maybe it's a bit small. I was expecting larger this thing, but what we have here is I have multiple variables that I have listed: number of vehicles, area of establishment, right? Whether they have a parking or not, right? And they all impact different vehicle types differently, right? So that's something that we need to understand, right? It's not about freight trip generated, but it's about freight trip generated by vehicle type, right? What are the different vehicle types that are used and how many trips are generated by each, right? And again, when we talk about trip generation, there are a couple of categories. One is what we refer to as production, other is attraction, and we need to understand both, right? There is an origin for these trips and there is destination for these trips. So we need to understand where they come from and where they go to, right? So that we have a complete picture. Right? So we had good success in developing these models, published in some internationally reputed journals as well. The other thing that we did was, thanks to funding from Shakti, we had a couple of projects where we looked at the earlier project was also funded by Shakti, and this one was to look at how can we implement sustainable urban freight, right, in Chennai, right? So that was the idea here, and the focus was on doing something in the field, right, collecting actual data, doing some experiments in the field, pilot studies in the field. So broadly, we looked at three things. One was what we refer to as freight consolidation, right? So how can we consolidate freight movements so that you move from LTL, less than truckload, to full truckloads, even for intracity movement, right? So that's one idea. And that's what our startup is also based on, right? We could refer to it as truck pooling, right? So that's the first idea we worked on. The second was on freight parking management plan. And the third was on looking at electrification, right? Again, this is a 4-year-old study, right? So much before what's happened now, right? So, but we did see signs of what is to come even back then. So we took one particular industrial area in Chennai. It's called Ambattur. Right, it's in the northwest part of Chennai. It's the largest MSME industrial sector in Asia, in South Asia, is what I hear. And we had fairly good support from the Estate Members Association, and we did about 160 samples of establishments there. Right, getting data from MSMEs is very difficult. They don't want to share anything. They look at you suspiciously, right? And but luckily, having IIT, the brand name, kind of helps, right? Sometimes I had to go there. I had to make phone calls from my landline to prove it to them, right? This is genuine, right? So that they can give information. But we were lucky enough to collect this data, and so what we found is when we do consolidation, both for trips entering into Ambattur, leaving from Ambattur, right? We have substantial reduction in trips, the vehicle kilometers traveled, and that also translates to significant reduction in carbon dioxide and other emissions as well, right? Hydrocarbons, NOx, and so on. This is with diesel vehicles. We've not yet come to electric vehicles, right? Just diesel vehicles, this is the kind of impact that we can have. Subsequently, we did the parking study. We took up a commercial area in Chennai, T Nagar. For those of you who are familiar with Chennai, that's a busy commercial area, right? There's a parking pedestrian study as well that has been implemented as part of Smart City over there. So over here, we looked at parking durations. I'm not sure what's happened there, but essentially we looked at two scenarios. So scenario one is when we're doing things as usual, right? The parking that's provided on street, anybody can park. Passenger cars can park, two-wheelers can park, and the commercial vehicles also have to fight for space with them, right? And you know what would happen, right? It's the passengers who win, and the trucks are typically doing double parking. They're blocking the way for other vehicles as well, right? And that leads to issues. So the second scenario is where we do dedicated freight vehicles. So we do traffic simulation studies to compare these scenarios. And what we end up seeing is if you provide dedicated freight parking, you could have about 20% reduction in travel times, right? So that's how much you can save. And this translates to CO2 savings, not just for the freight vehicles, but also for the other passenger vehicles that are using that stretch, right? So it can lead to significant savings. So that's one area where we're lacking in terms of policy. Parking for freight is actually not included in a lot of the policy. So that's something that we can look at. We also did a study on what would happen if we shift to electric vehicles, right? And we looked at cradle to grave emissions here. And what we ended up is you could have as much as 74% reduction, right? And Viral talked about having 75% reduction for solid waste management in Indore, Surat, right? And the numbers match, right? So I think that's interesting, right? So we could have significant reduction in CO2 if we move towards EV, right? So we did the study. Some people keep questioning: did you look at all factors, right? What about production of battery, and so on, right? And we did another study in which we looked at life cycle emissions, like life cycle analysis. So here we looked at the entire Chennai city, and we said what would happen if we moved to Bharat Stage 6, standard vehicles, as well as what would happen if you move to electric vehicles. And within electric vehicles, we looked at multiple scenarios as well. And this is published in the leading journal for transport and environment. And what we found here was even after considering life cycle analysis, you would have 50% reduction in greenhouse gases, right? It's not 75%, but it's 50%. That's significant still, okay? And so this helped convince the skeptics as well. And just to give a quick flavor here, we looked at different vehicle types. Again, apologize, for the short. I can share the presentation with you. So we looked at two-wheelers, three-wheelers. We looked at light-duty trucks, heavy-duty trucks, right? Consistently, we find the graph on the left is looking at percentage of coal-based electricity production. Even with current standards of about 60%, right? Life cycle emissions are lower. That's what we find. And if you have further reduction, if you have more renewable energy, that number keeps going further and further down. The gap is much bigger. And similarly, on the right is lifetime vehicle kilometers traveled. And if you look at the light-duty trucks, within 5,000, 10,000 kilometers, they are better than the diesel trucks in terms of life cycle returns. If you look at medium duty and heavy duty, that numbers are slightly higher, but that's still less than 100,000 kilometers, right? So typically these trucks run for 500,000 kilometers, 700,000 kilometers. So you're talking about significant savings, right, within the first year of getting these trucks when it comes to emissions. Similar data is for two-wheelers and three-wheelers. It's just better, right? Two-wheelers, the day I take it out of the showroom, I'm already doing better than taking a petrol vehicle out of the showroom, all right? For the three-wheeler, within about a couple of months, I'm doing better, right? So, this kind of gives quantitative results for people to bank on, when they come up with policies in terms of moving towards electric vehicles. So I think I'll stop there, and I'll have more perhaps during question answers panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Geeta Krishnan, that you have got, so many data-based analysis is there, and you have things to prove that, okay, from in EV, once we go for cradle to grave kind of studies, it is less as far as GHG emission is concerned. The problem is that another brother or sister IIT, they differ with what you are saying. But it's good that you are by our side, say. So it's like that. And now we'll move on to Professor Sanjay Gupta from SPA Delhi. So yes, now, you have got a big role to play.
Yeah.
Because, in urban logistics and planning, SPA is the landmark institution. So maybe you can say that, you can suggest us that how we can take it forward, and how we can get you into this role, all the more intensely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very good afternoon to all of you. Well, I am, since I'm coming from an institute called School of Planning and Architecture, I will look into this problem of sustainable urban freight more holistically, where probably technology is one of the player, but you also have planning interventions should come in so that you get the entire picture of sustainability. That is what my presentation comprises. I'm trying to bring perspectives, and also we've been running this urban freight for almost 15-20 years in the institute now. So some snippets of what research, little bit research which has a practice flavor, I'm going to develop on that. Sorry, Preeti, I have to do this. Yeah, sorry. So I don't have to go much into importance of urban freight. It's extremely important for the simple reason that it affects the city's economy, efficiency, apart from the stakeholders which are involved in this sector. Just to give figure, 10 to 15% of the vehicle equivalent kilometers, 2 to 5% of the employed urban workforce, and almost 3 to 5% of the urban land is involved in urban freight. I think that's very important. And obviously there are implications in terms of energy and emissions, almost 30% each is accounted in this sector. So that is why we are discussing here. There is a need for sustainable urban freight because to me, it becomes very critical for cities' efficiency. Just to run through, I am not going to give much of thing, but one of the main reason why I'm showing this slide is it's a very neglected sector. You hardly have any data on urban freight. You have on national freight because it's an organized sector of railways and air and ports and shipping, but you don't have it on the urban freight. So one of the few studies which was done way back in '94 by CRRI shows very clearly how your goods flow in the cities actually tend to diminish as you go down the city size. As you keep on growing in the economy, your tonnage, which is coming in and out of the city, actually tends to increase. And obviously, they have developed certain equations which probably can be used for policy planning, demand assessment. So this is one scarce info. We have been working on this sector for almost 20 years, so a little bit of empirical work already is there in our repository over the time. But now I would like to highlight few issues to start with, and then we keep on moving further. Logistics sprawl phenomena is impacting urban freight deliveries. All the mega cities, you take Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, we are all sprawling on the periphery. All the warehouses, go-downs are coming in. The e-commerce fulfillment centers are coming in. Now, this is going to impact your freight delivery and the sustainability. The non-motorized transport on the other side to me, has a very important role. I mean, I'll come to electric mobility later, but you have to have the role of each mode, and we have this inherent quality of the mode being very efficient, green mode. This to me is a neglected option of urban freight. We have still not addressed this issue. There are barriers of EV adoption in urban freight. Empirically, the research points out, I'm very happy to learn from the industry expert that there are no barriers, but I think it has to be collectively probably brought out on the table because India is a huge country. It's a huge country. You have empirical evidences across different cities and context. But I'm sure academia also have to learn from the industry. If there are any issues, we can probably look it over. Poor freight operations infra, just because we are not addressing the issue, we just continue to play as it comes, and obviously it is associated. Why? Because freight is a neglected component in city mobility plans and master plan. There is hardly, I'm from a field of town planning, but specialist in transport. I have never come across a master plan which has a section on urban freight. Except some truck terminal located somewhere by some town planner who is not really in the subject domain. I'm very open to it. So we don't really plan for what we need to plan. And this is one of the reasons why we don't address the urban freight infra. Weak institutional setups, inadequate capacities, absence of standards, performance benchmarks, they all are gray. I would be happy to learn if anybody can say that there are standards. There are no standards. There is absence of data. There is absence of research, as Dr. Durai pointed out. And that is where informed policy planning, I think, is absent on the urban freight sector. We are just groping, in spite of the best of the efforts. We are very happy Sudhindra Sinha Saab is here, but I'm sure in his mind he will also agree to us that there is a lot of absence of empirical evidence which can help him in taking that decision forward. If we come to the next slide, I'm just trying to, so if that being the context, the urban freight has an economic, social, and environmental impact, which goes with the so-called sustainable development principles. And what are those? Some of the policy measures by which sustainable urban freight can be taken care of is land use and planning measures, where we come from that domain, transport infra, managing infra measures, pricing, attitudinal behavior measures. There are whole series of measures which are there. And I think it's also very important, city logistics. I think we're not really acceptable to the fact that such a domain exists, whereas the whole Europe urban freight is being planned on city logistics principles. I think we have to move forward and start looking into how the urban freight, taking the cue from the city logistics concept, where you have the modes, you have the operations, and you have the infra, tying up together on the policy. That is how the whole urban freight will become sustainable. Now, if that, given that, I'm just trying to run through some of the practices. I'm sure eminent personalities here would be aware, but just for young students sitting around, international practices have this urban consolidation center where I should not be bringing my heavy truck right to the doorstep of delivery. I need to tap it up at a point from where I can do the last mile in a small vehicle. It's a fantastic practice happening everywhere in Europe, in the entire UK. The Bristol, some of the well-known cities are having this very well established. We don't have a single empirical evidence on this kind of an exercise. Cargo cycles, we are inherently possessed with this kind of a thing, but we don't plan for them because it's part of the neglected option of freight mobility. Times will come in future soon when we'll have lockers. We'll have Kiala points the way Germany and other European countries have, where you don't have to drop the freight right till the delivery. There are metro stations, there are stations where you can drop the parcel and people can pick it up. Nearby delivery areas, very interesting concept which we should start looking to a congested area. I don't have to deliver right to the shop. I need to create spaces where the cargo can first come and stop, and from there I can push the cargo to the shops. From the Indian example, we have this Mumbai Dabbawala. I'm sure all of you know ISO 2001, beautiful example of sustainable urban freight operations. Classical IM A, IM B, all the IMs have this classical, but yeah, it is one of its kind operations. And then you have a very good example of urban delivery networks, wherein you bring all the players under one umbrella and you actually give them the demand from the stakeholders, so that their vehicle utilization gets optimized. You try to so they are doing a lot of good jobs in Jaipur, Hyderabad, everywhere. Now we need those examples. We need those examples coming very forward. They are in bits and pieces, unfortunately. Just to give you a few snippets of Delhi, we've been working. Delhi is our lab being located in Delhi, so we keep on doing a lot of work on Delhi. Just to tell you that how much of Delhi is actually. Right now, almost 2 lakh vehicles enter in and out of Delhi, estimates, of freight every day. And we don't have really the solutions. How they come in, how they crowd your Azadpur market, how they crowd your Ghazipur Mandi. It's just unknown kind of an area. Almost we are handling close to about 10 lakh tons of goods every day, in and out every day. And a lot of goods go back for distribution purpose. Part of it only gets consumed within Delhi and then again they go back. That is the distributive trade character of Delhi. E-commerce is coming in a big way. It's a very closed door sector. Very difficult to get data. We were doing some work for Flipkart and some estimates say that almost 6 lakh units are handled every day by Flipkart alone. And Flipkart has got about a 30% business. So Amazon has almost got 30-40%. So one can imagine how much of parcel deliveries is happening every day in Delhi. Close to, maybe I would put it a figure of about 15 lakh units every day. They come through a fulfillment center, come through delivery hubs, and finally come to me, you, everyone who orders online. We just receive the order without knowing who's doing it and what is the kind of implication of such delivery. Is it a sustainable way of doing a delivery? How the dark warehouses are penetrating into the residential neighborhoods. That is another one. You have Blinkit, you have all sorts of last mile options. My point is, it's all under private domain. The government is silent on it. Have we planned for those dark houses in our master plans, in our neighborhood plans? We have not thought of it. I think this is what is really worrying us. We need to be cognizant of such kind of emerging delivery options. Logistics sprawl, which I said, we did probably one of its only kind study in 2014, and we found we were doing this study for timber market in Delhi, and you can imagine almost 100 meters every year the timber market is sprawling outwards. The warehouses, because there is no land within the city, and when you are sprawling out, your last mile delivery tends to increase. How are we coping up with that kind of an operation? Because the planners are not really aware. It's all market-driven sprawl which is happening. And I'm just giving one example. The entire Najafgarh, the entire Dwarka periphery is all all having warehouses of e-commerce players, and the delivery is all coming through Okhla. It's all coming through me, you neighborhoods. So the whole point is, this is what is unsustainability. How to kind of take care of such examples. One of the good noteworthy example in Delhi, what we planned and was called integrated freight complex. The whole idea in 2001 was to develop 4 of these in different directions to decentralize walled city, which has the wholesale hub. And the idea was to bring it on north in Narela, in Gazipur, in Madanpur, Khadir, in Dwarka. Incidentally, SPA was the consultant to DDA. We developed 2 of them at Gazipur and Narela. We were the master planners for them. Unfortunately, Narela is not really picked up. Gazipur partly is picked up. The intent was good, but it has not come up. The whole idea was to shift Chandni Chowk, take it out, wholesale market, bring it out, so that you can actually revitalize the entire walled city of Delhi, the way the historic cities of Europe are there. You bring that culture back to it, but then we have not been able to do it because there is still a trade linkage between these people amongst the markets. So we need to be cognizant of such kind of strategies, but I think it's a very good idea. Some point of time, we'll have to get into a planned decentralization of such hot spots of freight activities, which then can result in an ideal sustainability. We've done some work of NMT. Interestingly, we found the non-motorized transport almost account for 55% of the tonnage handled within walled city today. You take out all the NMT and the entire walled city will come to a standstill because the deliveries cannot be done right till their doorstep. I think so. What I'm just trying to highlight is there are actors, there are players within the whole spectrum of modes who have definite role in their own areas. I think we need to be cognizant of such kind of a multidisciplinary modal mix, including obviously EV will have a major role to play, but where EV is not really required to be penetrating, where the leads are smaller, I think that is where the NMT can actually come. Only thing is we need to scientifically address those issues. We did some work for EV adoption. According to us, we found the anxiety, the barriers were in terms of the electric range, inadequate charging, absence of battery swapping. These were some of the important, factors or attributes which all the small freight vehicle operators came out with. I'm happy to learn that there are not so barriers, but I was telling him before the session, well, it is an empirical work. And this is what we have got reported from the people who don't want to switch to EV. So somewhere down the line, a middle path has to be worked out. We also found what were the solutions. And they said the first priority should be extensive EV charging. Extensive EV charging for urban freight. We also need to have lot of awareness campaign. I think this is something which is missing in our whole policy discourse. We're not sensitizing people who really matter. I think we need to have mass campaign, show them good operational videos, campaign, so that they're aware that such a possibility exists. Financing obviously is an issue. I'm sure Mr. Gupta would agree. So we need to kind of come forward because these people are small one-time fleet operator. For them, everyday earning is their livelihood. So they just don't have spare money to get into investment of EV. So I think we need to do that and more subsidies. In addition, we also found that from the preference survey, we found that they would prefer dedicated battery swapping stations. They would also want these to be located at proposed charging stations and also where they're operating the base. For example, Okhla. Okhla is a delivery hub for South Delhi, for EV, all the e-commerce players. So I think those locations have to have charging, battery swapping, and all those factors by which they can actually get onto the EV bandwagon. We are always talking about plain, but we also did a study for hilly terrain, Shimla. And this is what the Shimla movement is. I'm sure all of you are aware of the lower mall and the upper mall. You have the entire retail markets there. The current system is when the goods come, you can see the moment it lands up into the wholesale, from there, their assembly area, from there it is all head load. It's all head load right till the wholesale and right to the retail shop which is there on the mall. And one can imagine what kind of problem these head loaders have. We do have porters, head loaders in Walled City also, but when you're climbing a terrain, it's really quite a tricky task. So what we did was we did a complete study of this, and we proposed that instead of that, can we have something which is called pedestrian, we call it as pedestrian tug. So you can have this pedestrian tugs, which is a technology which is available, so that by using the pedestrian tug, the porter can actually not put the load on his head, but actually use this tug to kind of take it forward. And along with it, what we did was we also proposed in the study the change in the supply chain. So we looked at the supply chain and we said that you need to kind of make intervention supply chain, so that now the whole exercise was, I'm not, because of the paucity of time, I'm not bringing the benefit of this. There were a lot of emission reduction which came in as a result of this, because apart from the social impact, the health impact, which probably these porters probably will not suffer because of something which is the pedestrian tug. So it's a very interesting work which we did for a hilly terrain. And finally, let me come to the last slide. So I am now coming to what are the policy imperatives. As a faculty from School of Planning, I feel we should hit the problem right where it is need to be addressed. We need to create hierarchy of freight handling facility. There is no hierarchy of freight handling facility. I mean, you can have, you need to have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 kind of hierarchical system, wherein which kind of vehicle will penetrate what tier, which smaller vehicle will penetrate tier 2, tier 3. I don't have to come to a neighborhood in an LCV. LCV need not penetrate into a neighborhood. It can be addressed by an auto rickshaw EV, or it can be addressed by a two-wheeler. I mean, that kind of a hierarchy, it's absolutely zero. We need to encourage city logistics practices. And I think now the time has come where we need to pick up what is called freight quality partnership. I think some of you are aware of this. The city logistics plan for Delhi, where I was advisor to GIZ, we have had interactions on freight quality partnership. We brought out the people who were managing freight in Delhi, trying to get to it, trying to make them commit to it, whether you would be willing to go the last mile. I think this is very important. You need to create freight operations supportive infra. Absolutely, it is not there. Promote incentive schemes for EV. I will not like to, and encourage green mode. I'm saying green mode. I mean the modes which are obviously zero emission targeted, the green, and it gels with the policy of the government of India, the green freight policy. So I think we need to kind of have NMT also role playing. I mean, just imagine how the fruits and vegetables are delivered in South Delhi, Okhla Mandi. The entire Okhla Mandi, apart from LCV, is all cycle rickshaws in the morning. I get my vegetable from a cycle rickshaw vendor who brings it to a retailer, and from there you pick it up. It's as simple as that. I'm not talking about big Reliance stores which have their own supply chain, but I'm talking about the mass. So we need to be cognizant of what is our mass. Our mass is also retail shopper. He would like to pick up the vegetable right in front of him. Conduct capacity building. I feel it is absolutely necessary. We need to have a mission mode capacity building program at the national level, the way we did. I was part of the urban transport capacity building for many years under the program about 5, 7, 8 years. I think it had an impact, because at least your ULB officials, all the people who really matter, become sensitive. I think we need to kind of take it forward. We need to carry more empirical studies. I mean, Dr. Durai has said, very few institutes, let me acknowledge very clearly, very few institutes are doing empirical works which is worthy of an application. I always maintain, when I was chairing a session on the research symposia, modeling is all fine, but what are you learning from modeling which goes into practice? I think that is very important. We need to connect the finding to the practice. I think that is what I call it empirical research. And finally, dissemination for informed policy planning. And let me just add last bullet. You need to formulate a national sustainable urban freight policy for the country. We don't have a national sustainable urban freight policy. If we have, I think a lot of things will will probably fall in place. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Professor Gupta. You rightly said that, non-motorized transport is very significant. In fact, in Germany, if you see many of the European countries, why only Germany, even in Netherlands, the roads, their width is gradually, just coming down. So what they are doing is the pedestrian pathway, the cycleway, and other structures. That is what is increasing over there. And yes, complete, very granular, logistic architecture that has to be thought of. Let me just inform you that some of the companies, they have started developing this. So maybe how the fulfillment center, the sorting houses, how the entire thing has to be there so that there's optimum utilization, because for them, it's pure economics that they are driving it forward. So that is what they are focusing on, that is there. Yes, awareness is very significant. In fact, one of the video clips that Niti has created, shown a video clip, so that has been seen by 77.5 crore people. So one video clip, 77.5 crore people have seen it. Now from teacher to student, yes, Preeti.
Thank you, sir. And at the outset, I'd like to thank the organizers, Terry and the UMI conference, for having me on this esteemed panel where I share the table with a lot of people whom I work with, a lot of people who I learn from every day. It's a great honor to be here. I'm representing Shakti, which is an enabler for clean energy and climate solutions, and we work across the quadruple helix of policymakers, academia, think tanks, governments, and industry to make this a better place with less GHG emissions, and work towards securing affordable and clean energy in this ecosystem. So let me, and this, I think I've been positioned at a very difficult spot where I think most of the things have been said already. But I take this as a positive opportunity to recap and also say a lot of things which we work towards in terms of advancing sustainable transport in the country. So I'll start by why freight is important. I think quite well established road freight transport contributing to almost around 90% of the freight transport emissions, and the freight demand is expected to grow over 5 times in the next 3 decades. Out of the freight movement across the country, across various modes of transport, road freight transport definitely contributes to a lot of GHG emissions, and I think that is a well-established fact that we've been quite aware about. Some of the key challenges that we across working with our various partners. So I think on this table we've worked across with IT Madras, Dr. Geeta in T Nagar, Chennai. We've as Mr. Gupta mentioned, we're working with Alti Green on a project in Leh Ladakh. We're trying to see how what is the cost benefit analysis of the last mile connectivity and basically urban freight in a difficult situation in Ladakh, with Terry on a very flagship project with India Post, where we're also trying to transition their fleet into EVs. I think Mr. Sinha knows it all. We've been very fortunate enough to get his guidance on the eFast work that has been shaping up since an year, and also on the Shunya campaign. And with all the guidance and blessings from the training that I have imbibed on is coming from Dr. Sanjay Gupta sir on never forgetting the core principles of how we really plan for future and how we would want to take this in a better systematic way, where we kind of do not forget our core planning principles, but also look at how we can tap into the climate space as well by reducing GHG emissions. So some of the key challenges that working across all the whole spectrum, I think, and at Electric Mobility Initiative at Shakti, we kind of bucket our electric mobility initiative into 4 strategic pillars, which is manufacturing, awareness, adoption, and charging infrastructure. And just to recap, some of the major barriers that are coming as a part of manufacturing is we are often possessed with high purchase cost, high import duties on components, and low energy and power density of batteries, especially when it comes to freight, because the idea is that how do I carry my freight? And in India, in a country like India, where we generally tend to overload our trucks for whatever distance that we're going. In terms of awareness and adoption, range anxiety being a very big barrier, and I think through all our projects we're trying to bust the myth of this range anxiety, and also work on how EV technology can definitely solve for last mile and urban problems for sure. And I think it has, since the last 3 years, hit a tipping point now that it does seem to be feasible through various use case studies that we've been performing at Shakti, be it India Post, be it the dairy sector, be it mining, be it the ports. I think it is now seeing the light of the day, where urban freight is now it's almost we can say that it is easily electrifiable for at least short distances. We are yet to work on the HDV segments, but I think we've kind of hit it off with the LCV and MDV segment. In terms of charging infrastructure, as Shailendra sir mentioned that nobody really comes back with a problem that we didn't find charging infrastructure, because a lot of the OEMs are working on solving the problem and being it easily chargeable with with the project that we're performing in Ladakh. I think it was not a major concern when it came to charging infrastructure, because it was a 3-pin socket that we could easily test and run the LCV products that we were planning to do test trial runs for. And it definitely is not the major problem at the moment, where the problem is now shifting more towards financing. Charging infrastructure is now kind of picking up the game. In terms of charging infrastructure, I think long waiting time for charging is an issue where people definitely would want to value time and move as fast as possible. But I think going forward, we're quite positive about it. And as we evolve with technologies, there are solutions that are which are a conjuncture of planning as well as the technology, which can solve the problems for long waiting time for charging. Looking at all of this, I've briefly mentioned about policy enablers that can definitely solve for each pillars, but I would want to reserve that and maybe come to the last slide, where come back to those points on my last slide, where would want to give a direction on how we intend to move forward. So as I mentioned, there are various efforts that Shakti kind of supports at the national level, at the sub-national level, and the local level. As Mr. Sinha rightly pointed out in his opening remarks, that we're supporting eFast now since a year, and at G20 and Clean Energy Ministerial this year, 16 industry partners along with 14 think tanks came together and announced a demand aggregation of 7,750 trucks, of which the breakup of across the LDV, MDV, and HDV segments are present. I think it's a great platform anchored at Niti Aayog, and with the guidance of Mr. Sinha sir, we are trying to move this conversation really fast in the game. We're trying to work on a 3-year strategy that will then guide and basically make all the industry players commit to something that is doable and which is easily scalable, which kind of gives us the visibility that yes, electric trucks are possible, and it's not we're not very far from kind of cutting down the emissions from the MDV, HDV segments as well. So eFast basically has three core strategic pillars that we work on. It works on pilot and demand aggregation, unit economics and finance, and informing decision makers, where we try to work with all of the ministries that are associated with the topic of transport, and transport being a very highly complicated subject. It involves a lot of ministries and coordination with a lot of them. Coming to the flagship project that we're doing with Terry, and I would like to give credit to the Terry team here for putting this together for us, which is on, so basically the objective of the project is that we're trying to see if cost feasibility of transitioning their mail motor service vehicles is possible in the six cities that were selected by the Department of Post. We've begun the project early in this year, and we're almost coming to see that the TCO is quite favorable for LCV and MDV segment, but HDV is obviously not a lot of numbers that are there currently in their operation, but definitely it'll be easily doable. So this is just a basic background on how their main motor operations are there. India Post has 23 postal circles, out of which we've selected 6 cities and 103 MMS units. And I think almost presently 87% of their vehicles run on diesel. So now coming to the crux of the study, where we see that the potential to save almost around 10,794 tons on tailpipe emissions annually, and the diesel consumption reducing there by a significantly high number. We see that the TCO for LCV MCV has really hit it off, where a 10 to 12 is going down to somewhere around a 4 to 10 rupee kind of a per kilometer run, and MCV segment, which is predominantly the India Post fleet, is coming to around 8 to 15 rupees per kilometer. Going ahead, opportunities and way forward for electrifying urban freight. I think we are kind of hitting various points in the ecosystem where we are trying to basically do technical assistance to a lot of industry players, to a lot of government departments. We're also trying to do capacity building programs, and we're also trying to spread awareness. So in terms of having a bird's eye view on what really the ecosystem is kind of shaping up, I have basically 4 opportunity points where at least Shakti going forward would basically work towards. And I think this is also some bit work in progress as well through eFast with guidance of Mr. Sinha sir. We're trying to create these champions of change, which will really bring out the visible results and impacts to a larger ecosystem and audience, where we are trying to experiment with a few trial runs with India Post, e-commerce, dairy sector. We're working with one of the leading dairy firms in Gujarat, where we're trying to test how their fleet can also transition to electric vehicles, fruits and vegetables and bottling plants. I think Terry has been prominent in working in the state of UP for one of the very prominent food and beverages company. The next solution that we would look forward to is kind of demand aggregation. I'm sure everybody is very well aware of the Grand Bus Challenge and how it has helped bringing down the cost of e-buses in India. I'm sure Gerald would also agree to this. Then developing a robust and resilient electric vehicle charging infrastructure. I think that is the key to all the solutions to a larger audience. And last but the most important point when it comes to urban freight and what we're also experiencing right now in the ecosystem, talking to a lot of industry players, that the access to affordable financial products, I think that is something which will be a game changer when it comes to scaling up urban freight. electric urban freight in the country. We should definitely provide support for scaling business model fees like fleet ownership, reverse lending, flexible structures. Banks and MDVs and other DFIs can help us mobilize low-cost funding. I think by reducing the risk of battery technology and products resale value, because a major hinge point when we talk about battery is the residual value of battery, and often people say that there is no resale value, or I'm not getting loans at a perfect interest rate. I think that kind of falls out, and it's a major fallout right now in the ecosystem. So maybe looking at restructuring financial products to help us mitigate challenges at our higher dominant price through innovative models can help us improve the cash flow for end customers. I think I'll pause at that and reserve my thoughts for the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, Shruti. So you heard the 4 speakers. Now, as there is absolutely we have got 5-6 minutes time. 6 minutes, okay. So we can just have 4 representatives from audience. So let it be moderator's choice if possible. But yes, Gerald to start with from this side, and yes, you raised the hand, so you are there. And Ajit Pai, 3. That means makes 1, 2, 3 minutes. And Shruti, would you like to speak? Sishti, I'm sorry. So 1 minute, and Mr. Rao, only 1 minute. Yes.
Okay, so we'll do it very fast. Thank you first very much. Fantastic presentation. Great to see the evolution in the market. And I think the last set of bullets shared by Preeti are spot on, right? I mean, today we see that need for addressing those points, the charging, the affordable financing, the awareness that has been raised multiple times. There is also a question of, when you look at the bigger picture, national picture, we can see that the cities are going to become metropolitan region, right? So it's beyond cities. It's thinking about metropolitan, freight delivery and freight logistics system that then are interconnected between metropolitan areas by rail and the like. That's part of the transition, right? So you think long distance rail arriving at a consolidation center, then distribution throughout the metropolitan area with, green vehicle. That's really what empowers, in full-fledged. So that's an opportunity you didn't mention, but I think is very, very important. The other point is the CMP guidelines, Comprehensive Mobility Plan guidelines, need to be revised in my view. Okay, you cannot plan without planning for freight extensively today. And you can see that because everybody working on CMPs are passenger experts. There's no freight expert in the mix. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but that's what I witness in the cities I'm working in. Those 2 disciplines need to be integrated. There's no functioning city without integrating all the flows, in thinking about the time of the day, the parking, the charging, etc. Last point I would make is that as we look at larger form factors in terms of vehicle, there's an opportunity to think about how do you deliver the charging capacity for those, different type of trucks and buses for the metropolitan system to function. And that's something that requires PPPs and, smart financing in order to move forward. But thanks, fantastic presentations.
It was very nice hearing the chair and the other speakers from the academics as also one of the founders. Very specifically, when Professor Durai was talking about data fusion, and then somebody was talking about the planning aspects of urban logistics, I would request the chair to just address or keep it in mind a couple of points. One is, as a planner and as an operator, if I could be made available the GST data, it helps. Please provide me the GST data. Please provide me the Shop and Establishment Acts data. Please provide me the MSME data. As also, please provide me the FASTag data. And I would do the planning and the results would there to be seen. The vehicles, the commodities would come in a bit later. Thank you.
So just a quick question for Mr. Gupta. You talked about 93% being indigenous, but you excluded, one massive part, which is the cells. So can you give us some indication in cargo, especially three-wheeler cargo where you are, what percentage of the total bill of materials or cost of your vehicles are the cells?
Yeah, thanks. Clearly, cells is the single largest component. Today, I would estimate the cost of cells to be between 30 and 35% of the cost of a vehicle. And clearly, these are imported for the simple reason that cells are not made in India. I'm happy to say that under the PLI scheme, and we all have issues with the way it is structured, but under the PLI scheme, these cells are going to start getting made in India. We've already tied up with these manufacturers. So starting 18 months from now, our cell procurement will also become domestic. I see no reason why anything needs to be imported. I mean, people talk about PMSM motors, right? Rare earth magnets, China has a stranglehold on it. We don't need to go that route. This is the role of innovation. This is the role of private industry to eliminate all these constraints and get there. And government policy plays a role in that. Getting cells to be made in India is a very important part of that.
Thank you, everyone. That was a great session. And my question will also be to Mr. Gupta from Altgreen. I think the point about NMT, which was made, was really insightful. About how more than 50% of freight being handled is being done through NMT. So I was wondering how the industry is thinking around that.
Well, honestly, I don't think industry is thinking about NMT because industry has very little role to play in NMT. It is completely fragmented to the level of an individual person, whether it is head loads, whether it is cycles and so on. But as a citizen, I think it's fantastic because this is true zero emission, right? The IITs may differ, and I'm on your side. Okay, EVs are better than ICE, please. But yeah, thank you. But NMT is real zero emission. This is what the country needs, and it's not just about greenhouse gases. It's also about local tailpipe emissions. Greenhouse gases, yes, climate change. But if you look at heart disease, lung disease, sorry, I'm coughing today, neurological disease, any of these diseases, we've come to take them as granted. This is part of life. No, this is part of the result of pollution. And the densely populated cities that the chairman pointed out today, these will benefit by eliminating tailpipe emissions, irrespective of greenhouse gases where the balance lies.
Yes.
Sir, with the national goal of reducing logistics cost, adoption of electric vehicles gives a good opportunity for reduction of operational cost. In addition, when these big agencies who are using a lot of vehicles, when you are working towards electrification of these automobiles, I think there is a big opportunity to optimize how the vehicles are being deployed. And also, we should be careful in suggesting alternates for IC vehicles what are being used now. We don't need to go for a same capacity, same power type vehicles, and we should do a deeper study to understand what is the way things are being transported and identify the correct optimal solution for the electric vehicle. There's a lot of opportunity here for reduction of logistics costs.
Thank you, Mr. Rao. Yes, last question.
Over the last few years on this topic. So my question is to Ms. Gupta. So I just would want to know from you very briefly, you've seen an uptake of EVs across the city. What do you think are still the deterrents of why it is so large-scale accessibility? Is it that, I do understand these are micro players and they probably don't have a financial backing or a stability which would allow them to expand in terms of larger adoption. But what do you think are the deterrents which can be resolved at a
at a policy level, the biggest deterrent is availability of financing for people who are buying vehicles. The driver cum owner, the individual, the guy who's buying 1 or 2 or 3 vehicles today, and finance is a coward. And please, I'm a finance guy, so don't get me wrong, but it is true and it is correct that finance is a coward. The financiers are careful. It's a new technology. They don't know what's going to happen. 3 years later, what will they do with the vehicle? Will it have a resale value? So availability of finance can be supported by policy. I know government is working with the World Bank and SIDBI and all that, but it's just taking too much time. But finance is the big reason why uptake is still not as good. And the other reason is that India has experienced poor quality vehicles, and people, what do they say? Doodh ka jala chhach bhi phuk ke peete, right? Once burned, twice shy. So if you don't put in the time to develop good vehicles, you will not be able to find customers, and you will delay the industry by whatever X amount of time.
So now we'll have to go for a hard stop, isn't it? So Sharif, thanks a lot. Thanks for being here. So a lot of, takeaways. In fact, there is a whole list of assignment that you people give me. That is the problem in going to, seminar. So I get more tasks than anyone else. But okay, I will be in turn distributing it to you also to take it forward. So that is how we'll take it forward. And I'm sure that as we move on, this particular sector now, I should put it this way, that a couple of years before, it was not in the radar. Now it is completely over there. So it is a focus now. It is being taken forward on a fast track mode. And with all of us, putting it together, my sense is that we should be able to achieve it at the same pace the way, the passenger transformation is taking place. So with that, maybe we have got a lot of, gratitude to Mahua for making this platform available, to Terry for curating it so well, and to all the 4 speakers. They have been so good, grateful to each one of them, to the 4 representatives, 5 of them from the audience. They have been moderator's choice, and of course the question from the left side, PhD scholar. So thanks a lot. Thank you.
Now, thank you so much. I think the speakers and the chair deserve a round of applause. Thank you. In terms of importance, sir,
and Sharif moderator also deserves it. I could finish it in time.
Thank you. Well, so I'll just quickly, before we disperse and we head to our homes and catch the match. So in terms of the importance, I'm not, UMI, I think this is one of the big side events that we are having on urban freight, particularly focused on urban freight, which was kind of missing. And we also had a session and, a paper presentation from students on urban freight as well yesterday. So that's commendable from UMI and Mahua to take the lead. We have seen, it's very difficult for you to chair where you have 2 professors on left and right, and they just 10 minutes is just a warm-up time for them to start. So thank you so much, sir, for ably and efficiently managing the session. I thank the speakers to be present in person from Bangalore and Chennai, as well as from Delhi as well, as also Viral in terms of presenting the setting the context, all the audience, and also the audience who have stood by us, and pun intended, all through. And we understand the difficulty of getting a seat if it's of interest to many people. But thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we hope to have similar session in the next round. I also, on the last bit, I handed over to Kishore to facilitate handing over the mementos to the speakers, and followed by a group photograph of the speakers. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, Sharif. I would now request the chairperson to distribute mementos to our speakers. Professor Sanjay Gupta, Dean Research and Professor of Transport Planning, the School of Planning and Architecture, Delhi. Dr. Geeta Krishnan Ramadurai, Professor, Transport Engineering Division, IIT Madras. Mr. Shailendra Gupta, CFO and co-founder, Altigreen. Ms. Preeti Shukla, Project Manager, Electric Mobility Program, Shakti Sustainable Engineering Foundation. I would now request the chairperson to distribute mementos to our moderator, Sharif Kamar, Associate Director, Transport and Urban Governance, Division, Terry. And Ms. Viral Joshi, Research Associate, Transport and Urban Governance, Division, Terry. I would now request Sri Sanjay Gupta, Dean Research and Professor, to give a memento to Chairperson Sudhendu J. Sinha. We thank you for joining us and for your cooperation. Please join us for lunch.